So at this point, hopefully, you've done so much prep work that you've effectively got a coat hanger on which to hang this novel. And you've got things that you can refer back to. You're not navigating this in uncharted waters because you already have a bit of a map as to where you want to go.
You've got an outline. You might even have an agent. Now you're sitting down in front of the screen with the keyboard under your fingers. Now you've got to write the book. This is the hard part. And you've got to write the first line.
What is it there for? It's there to say hello, effectively, to the reader. The reader picks up the book, probably kindly disposed toward it, otherwise they would have picked up another book. They are interested, and they open it, and the first line is the book saying hello. But it's also the book making a promise. What is the book going to be about? Is it going to be compelling? So the first line has got a lot of weight on it.
Create something right away. Give me questions. Give me a story right on the very first line.
I'm going to tell you something about Amazon reviews, which many writers say they don't read, and actually most writers do. If you get one Amazon review that says, I thought this started really badly, but it got better as it went on, that's an opinion. That's fine. But early on in my career, when I looked at these reviews, I found that probably 50 or 60% of reviews were saying, this book starts really slowly, but it's worth sticking with because it gets really good by the end. Now that told me something, which was I was too slow to bring the reader in, and I was relying on good faith that they were going to keep reading. So I actually altered my writing style. And now I think quite hard about how I'm going to pull the reader in at the start of the book. But that opening scene should also tell us something about either the character or the world that we're about to immerse ourselves into.
My first book, Killing Floor, the first line of mine that anybody ever read, I was arrested in Eno's diner. That's the first sentence. And what does that do for us? What does that do for the book? What does that do for the reader? It's a fairly plain statement. It's a record of what happened. I was arrested. And where? In Eno's diner. Well, Eno's diner sounds fairly intriguing. It's not a chain. It's not a national brand. It's obviously a local place somewhere. So immediately the hint is we're in a small place, possibly miles from anywhere else. It's an individual establishment. And the first half of the sentence, I was arrested, asks really two questions there. First of all, who are you? And secondly, why did you get arrested? Did you deserve to be arrested? Are you a bad guy? Were you arrested unjustly? Are you a good guy who's going to have to try and clear his name? Or what? Don't forget, when a reader picks up a thriller, they are reading it with the background knowledge of every other thriller they've read. Therefore, I was arrested, to them means probably unjustly, because the book's main character, is starting out with the statement. The main character of a book is usually a good guy, not always, but mostly, can be mixed, can be an anti-hero, can be a bit noir, but basically we assume we're going to be on that person's side. So we assume that probably he's being arrested unfairly, under dubious circumstances, and we read on to find out exactly what happened.
I spent 10 years in newspaper journalism, and the first thing we were taught was the most important line in any story was the first one, because very few people were ever going to read to the end. So you needed to get the important facts into the top.
Some first lines give you the maximum information in a few words. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. These two people are Uncle Vernard and Aunt Petunia, but they're called Mr. and Mrs. here to make them more distant. It makes them seem unfriendly. Why give their address? Their address is not relevant in the novel, but it's a boring address. Privet Drive, number 4. It's a kind of caricature of a suburban address. What does normal mean? Basically means they don't like magic, and this is going to be a book about magic. And why thank you very much? You can actually just imagine Mrs. Dursley saying thank you very much, like that. It shows that they're smug. They look down on people who aren't like them. And of course, we know we're not going to like them. We don't like people who are smug about being normal. It's nothing to be proud of. And that, of course, is J.K. Rowling. Behavioral science, the FBI section that deals with serial murder, is on the bottom floor of the Academy building at Quantico, half buried in the earth. There's a lot to this first line. Behavioral science is an FBI section. We didn't know that. The author knows stuff. This is going to be a very realistic and detailed story. And behavioral science sounds like a department in a university, but it's all about serial murder. This is going to be about a serial killer. And he knows it's on the bottom floor of the building. He knows where the building is. It's in Quantico, near Washington, D.C. And then just a little touch of sinisterness, half buried in the earth, like a coffin or something. So a really lot of information in that first line. It's going to be about a serial killer. It's going to be a realistic thriller. And there's going to be something a bit gruesome about it. And that is The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris, a book I wish I had written. Here's one of mine. The small boys came early to the hanging. 8 words. It's a paradox because we don't normally think of a hanging as something that little boys would be allowed to watch or would want to watch. So I wrote that line because I wanted to give a sense of a violent society and a cruel society. This is about the Middle Ages. This is, in fact, The Pillars of the Earth, which is my most popular book. We've sold 27 million of them so far. And I wanted to make it clear that this isn't your usual happy picture of the Middle Ages with brave knights in armour jousting and, maidens being rescued from high towers and all that. The sort of romantic Middle Ages that comes from early French poetry. I wanted to make it clear that this was going to be a very gritty picture of the Middle Ages.
Now, you might have a barnstorming opening line, in which case, hooray, you're off and running. If you don't, sometimes it helps to drop the reader into the middle of the action. So you're not opening this book with a load of exposition, which is boring, frankly. Plunge the reader into the action.
Always start on both a macro and a micro level in the middle. Let me explain what I mean. If you're writing a scene and you're not sure how to get the guy into the room, how do I get these people started? Where do I get them from left to right? Do I want them to drive up? Start in the middle of the scene. Start from the most important part of the dialogue. See what happens by doing that. I start my books that way as well. The first line was, when the first bullet hit my chest, I thought of my daughter. I didn't start with him upstairs. I didn't have him enjoying a sandwich, coming downstairs, looking at the couch, going, boom, he's already shot. We are already in the middle. My challenge now is to maintain that pace. One of my favorite examples of this is actually Star Wars. Star Wars has that beginning little write-up, but then they just throw you into this scene. Like Darth Vader's coming along, and these guys in white, and there's this Princess Leia coming in a minute or two, and R2-D2's trying to, you don't even know who's what. You don't know any of the characters yet, and yet you're still glued. That's a good technique to try. Now, do you want to do this all the time? No. But for most of my books, I think it's a very good idea. And for you, when you're starting out, to try to start in the middle. Don't give me 4 pages of a sunrise or a sunset. Don't have the guy walking into his house. He's already in his house. Let me give you an example or two while we're sitting here, right next to here. The very first page of the book, The Innocent, which I start in second person, is, "You never meant to kill him." So as this book opens up, Matt is in a fight at his school. Two other guys got in a fight. You probably saw these things go on when you were in college, maybe, and that's where I got the idea for this one. So there was a fight in my college, and two guys were fighting, and the rest of us were sort of standing around, his friends, our friends, making sure that we kept everybody else apart, and you're grabbing each other kind of like that. And I kept thinking to myself, and I was grabbing this one guy, what happens if I threw him and he accidentally hit his head and he died? And now I'm up on a charge of voluntary manslaughter and up in prison. That's on the very first page of the book, The Innocent. Again, I don't have them going to the bar, grabbing a few drinks, settling in. You don't know who this guy is right away. We're getting into the action. It's a good example. I'm not saying simplify it. I'm not saying cut out what matters. I'm not saying don't give me heart and soul so I get these people, but give it to me a little later. Try to get me to start at the most important part of the story. We are always interrupting a life. Batman's story really begins at the moment that his parents are shot and killed. Sure, he had a life before that. We may go into it eventually later on, but you need to start, if you're doing the origin story, there. Am I saying give no context? No, of course not. The problem is most of you give too much context. Most of you think that I need a whole long backstory and I need to know what this guy's favorite alcoholic drink is and if he prefers blondes or brunettes or whatever. We don't need to know that much. We need to get into the story and then we learn it as we go through the action once we have ourselves started.
So you may already have this brilliant opening line set up, but if you haven't, don't be intimidated at this point. Just try and get something down because everything can be fixed. This is the great beauty of writing. Everything can be molded and changed and shifted. Just try and get some of the key points that you want to make in that opening chapter down at this point.